Let's dive into the topic of energy systems related to biomass. And the biomass field we'll be talking about in particular, wood waste. In this video, we'll talk about the wood waste industry and the power and pollution it produces in energy generation. BC has been the largest lumber producing region in Canada. In 2004, the National Resources Canada, along with the Forest Product Association of Canada, reported that BC has produced over 6.5 million bone-dry tons of lumber. While harvesting these lumbers, the formation of wood residues are inevitable. About 1.8 million bone-dry tons, approximately 20% of the harvested trees, was disposed in wood residue incinerators. Usually only about 50% of the log biomass is turned into lumber, and the remainder, like the stumps, branches, and defective pieces, is chipped and fed into plump mills. Throughout the years, these wastes are usually fed into beehive burners to be disintegrated, or they will be left in landfills to be decomposed. We all know these are great wastes of exergy. In addition, the exhaust from these beehive burners are usually unfiltered, which have heavily impacted the people's health and the climate, resulting in most beehive burners to be banned and closed down across Canada. Now, with the rise in technological development and the increasing awareness of climate change, more effort is placed into recycling these wastes. Energy-related CO2 emissions was reported increasing by 1.4% in 2017 by the International Energy Agency. This means that drastic reductions is needed to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement on climate change, which requires the increased use of traditional biomass fuels. Wood wastes are now used as biomass fuel to produce green power in certain places. For example, Miller Western, a company in Alberta, are making full use of these wood residues. The softwood timber harvested is delivered to sawmills for lumber production, while some recyclable sawmills and pulp mill residues in the form of shavings and fines are sent to a regional panelboard mill, and the other non-recyclable are transported to a regional bioelectricity plant along with bark and sawdust. They then generate green power for the export to the Alberta grid. With this knowledge, we can now narrow down the outcome of these wood waste into two outcomes: decomposition in landfills or agricultural uses such as fertilizers, or disintegration, heat or power extraction from the burning of these wood. Let's evaluate them. We know wood has carbon locked into them, and the burning and decomposition of these woods releases these carbon back into the environment. So in theory, leaving a fixed volume of wood to rot would release the same amount of carbon as burning them while harvesting the heat energy. Are there really no differences in emissions between these two processes? To further understand this, we shall take a look at two factors. Firstly, the rate of emissions. The rate of carbon emissions from burning of wood is obviously faster than decomposition. A group of researchers from the US Forest Services and University of Minnesota found that downwoody stubbies of softwood would require an average of 80 years to fully decompose. Burning of these woods would take far less time to release these carbon back into the atmosphere. The rate of carbon absorption by natural sinks remains the same whether the wood waste is burnt or decomposed. Clearly, the best outcome for the climate would be to make sure that the rate of emissions does not exceed the natural sinks responses. Next, we'll talk about the energy and greenhouse gases wood waste produces. The burning of wood does not only releases carbon dioxide, but also methane and nitrous oxide. 1 kilogram of wood stores about 500 grams of carbon, which is equivalent to 1.8 kilograms of carbon dioxide. A recent study by BCIT reported that the burning of 1 kg of wood produces approximately 16 megajoules of energy, but it also releases the stored carbon as well as an additional of 315 grams carbon dioxide equivalents of methane and 50 gram carbon dioxide equivalents of nitrous oxide. This sums up to be 20% more CO2 emissions as compared to decaying of wood. However, if we compare these additional emissions with natural gas at the generation of 16 megajoules of energy, natural gas emits 800 grams of carbon dioxide equivalent greenhouse gases emissions. This does shine a good light on utilizing wood waste as biomass fuels. In the end, burning of wood waste does produce more greenhouse gases emissions when compared to decaying of wood, but it is apparent that utilizing these waste to substitute coal and gas is beneficial for the climate.